we have to have short gains to, validate that whatever we're doing is, gonna work, and we need to just put some, back into it
Mhm.
um, for the longer. So, is there an issue, not an issue, is there a way to differentiate between the short-term successes, but also the long-term, the long-term ROI? So we definitely need to have some shortcut, like short-term successes, but do we take those into consideration where when we are calculating ROI, or
Yeah.
do they belong in two different segments?
Yeah, ROI is really important, both at the front end of projects as you're planning them, and certainly as you execute them to monitor on an ongoing basis, and then when you've completed projects, to kind of to understand the true impact of the investments you make. You have two kind of big components of marketing and advertising, kind of the ongoing sort of building your brand, right? Building awareness. These things are kind of, long-term trends. You're investing in market penetration and, mind share and all of these different things, favorability. And you can sort of see, if you look at, long-term trends and long trend lines, that's where you see that growth over time of your sort of, brand equity and market penetration. But if you look at the like weekly sales or daily sales, you're going to have these huge lumpy short-term trends going on. Get ready to deep dive into the world of digital transformation, where we explore the latest trends, innovations, and challenges shaking up industries. Join us as we decode the secrets behind successful digital strategies and hear from experts who are at the forefront of disrupting the status quo. In each episode, we'll unravel the mysteries of the digital realm and uncover the hidden opportunities that lie within. From artificial intelligence to blockchain, from automation to cybersecurity, we'll leave no digital stone unturned. But hold on tight, because this podcast isn't your average tech talk. We're injecting a hefty dose of wit and humor into every episode, making learning about digital transformation an absolute blast. So if you're ready to embrace the digital revolution with a smile on your face, tune in to the Digital Disruption Podcast and get ready to be entertained, informed, and inspired. Don't miss out on the fun. Subscribe now and join us on this wild digital journey. Hi, Daoud. Welcome, and glad to be back for another week. And I can't wait to jump into the latest topic and the latest mayhem that we can bring to the industry.
It is always a mayhem. It is always a mayhem. Um, in this episode, as per tradition, we'll always like touch on the next episode's subject and stuff like that. So for like for those who are following us, you already know what this episode is going to be all about. For those who are not following us, first of all, please follow us, and second of all, this episode is all about ROI, which is one of the, if not the most elusive things that you can ask a marketeer or a business, if you ask anyone about ROI, they're just like, yeah, let me get back to you in like 5 years or something like that. So, and especially for something like massive and impactful as digital transformation, sometimes calculating ROI and actually justifying investment in such a huge transformation as digital transformation can sometimes be a little challenging. You need to, if you have a stakeholders or like a board of directors, you need to tell them that whenever we do this, digital transformation, it will get us ROI, and we are expecting this amount to be changed and this amount to be, this amount of revenue to increase and stuff like that. And it is not an easy thing to calculate, unfortunately. But this is one of the most, talked about, untalked about topics that we want to cover here. So I will hand the mic to Patrick and let him, tell you how to calculate ROI and how can you approach this from a strategic perspective. So off to you, Patrick.
Thanks, Daoud. Yeah, ROI is really important, both at the front end of projects as you're planning them, and certainly as you execute them to monitor on an ongoing basis, and then when you've completed projects, to kind of to understand the true impact of the investments you make. So this is why in the sort of project management world, you have both the kind of estimated, predicted ROIs that are used in order to prioritize and plan projects, and then you have the actual ROI that's part of the kind of ongoing and post-mortem of those projects. And then hopefully within your organization over time, you get better and better at predicting ROI so that there's a narrower gap between your estimated return on investment and your actual. So, and it requires actually the input of a lot of people to get that math right. You need to kind of go leverage the expertise of your CFO and his or her team, and your technical folks for appropriately scoping things, your partners who are helping you onboard new technologies, your project managers, etc. Right? So it requires a lot of smart people and coordination of a lot of moving parts to get these kind of estimations and actual measurement of those correct. Where digital transformation and kind of tech maturity, digital maturity, as we've talked about in prior episodes, it stands to touch a lot of different areas of your organization, which means in all likelihood there's multiple projects that are part of that. If let's say you have a transformation roadmap, you've gone through current state assessment, you've created a roadmap. Now you have a dozen different projects ranked in terms of level of effort, urgency, etc. Right? So now each of those projects individually is going to address an individual business problem, capabilities gap, or opportunity, which that means, Daoud, you guessed it, right? Each of those projects needs to be, you kind of need to make estimates of what area of the business it's going to impact and what the benefit is going to be. And they're not all the same, right? So, and then of course you may have some holistic benefits that you need to account for as well. But let's just kind of run through a few different examples real quick of kinds of projects, new tech, etc., that might be on that roadmap, and we'll kind of talk through some different of the ways to think about those different examples. So process automation, for example, marketing automation tools that you might be onboarding, better data orchestration, new service or product delivery channels, customer engagement tools. These are certainly increasingly the rage, and so customer engagement platforms that you may be onboarding, digital experience tools, testing and conversion rate optimization, building that into your ways of working, which could involve both process and tools, media and measurement capabilities, identity resolution, data clean rooms. So there's a whole bunch of. Then this is certainly not exhaustive list, but you can see even from the list I've provided here, right? Those different components of a roadmap would have to be assessed differently. So, for example, let me pause for 1 minute and just say, generally speaking, right, ROI, just so we're all on the same page, you're basically trying to get to a ratio of the benefits that you realize from some set of investments compared to the cost of making those investments. So that ratio can be expressed a number of different ways and can be nuanced a number of different ways. But you're taking the benefit, the financial benefit, less the costs that it takes you to realize those benefits divided by the cost, and that ratio is your return on investment. So if it's negative, that means during the estimating phase, if it's negative, that means it's costing you money in the long to make that investment. You're not realizing you don't predict you're going to get a financial benefit that outweighs the cost. If it's positive, the more positive it is, the more benefit you're realizing in relationship to that cost. The other important considerations are time horizons. So like over what period of time are you realizing the benefit? Over what period of time are you realizing those costs? So some projects may have a limited time window, in which case, right, you maybe you'll only get benefits for a year, and maybe the costs are a one-time fixed cost, right? Okay, so then you make your calculation and go. But some, kinds of capital investments, infrastructure investments have really long-term benefits, long-term both one-time costs and ongoing costs associated with them. So this is why I said you have to involve people like your CFO and project managers to really hone in on how these numbers net out. So process automation, you're gaining efficiency. Okay, so if you can realize cost savings, so maybe your AdOps teams through automation of certain media trafficking practices, right? Maybe you gain a 25% efficiency. How you're going to realize that benefit? Are you going to fire 25% of your your AdOps team? I hope not. There are companies that would do that. I won't name them by name, but certainly if you were faced with the need to increase your shareholder dividend next quarter, maybe you would do that. But most companies are not going to take efficiency gains and immediately decrease their workforce, right? So you also have to account for how do you reinvest that increased productivity of your workforce there, right? So that one is particularly challenging when you make efficiency gains and thereby increase the productivity of your workforce. But just as a simple exercise, you could literally say, okay, if we predict we're going to get a 25% efficiency gain for this team of people, this is what these people have 25% more capacity, and therefore, if they're at 90% utilization, then we're going to 90% of 25% and subtract the cost and divide by the cost, and there's your ROI on that. Customer engagement, now you're trying to look at some incremental gains you're going to get, right, from reducing customer churn rates, improving customer lifetime value, and improving average order value. It's right, and so you're influencing things like customer loyalty, repeat purchase rates, right, the size of people's baskets, all these things. So, looking at these two different examples, what that tells us is we need to have really agreed upon metrics and KPIs, right, for each of the areas of the business we're going to impact. And we need to establish some baselines. So let's look at customer engagement. So for our existing customers, what are those? What is the average lifetime value over an X year period of time? What is that average order value? What is the repeat rate? All of those things, right? We need to have baselines of that, and we need to estimate now some improvement that we're going to make on those metrics. And then at that point, it's pretty easy to say, okay, this is the incremental benefit of this investment. Estimated. Remember, we're now in the estimating phase, right? So I can't stress enough, when you're trying to convince somebody to invest money in your pet project, through no malice or dishonesty on your part, you're going to paint as rosy a picture as possible. And you need to resist that urge, and you need to put some, you need to actually build some risk uh, into your estimates of how you're going to improve metrics. How do you do that? Well, one way you do it is you sort of bracket that. So if you think you're going to do a 10% improvement in AOV, for example, you need to actually model that out as, plus or minus 25%, right? So maybe you only improve it by 7.5%, or maybe go even more conservative, 50% error either direction, right? But give yourself some wiggle room to say things we know actuals are not going to equal estimates, and let's hedge conservatively for a worst case scenario, and let's also see what kind of upside there is if we underestimate. So now you'll have kind of, at a minimum, you'll have sort of a low end of what's reasonable, a high end of what's reasonable, and that kind of middle of the road of what you think the likely outcome is, right? For each of those benefits. So if you improve purchase rates, like first 30-day repeat purchase rates, or first 60-day repeat purchase rates for your new customer acquisitions, and you improve average lifetime value by X%, and you decrease churn rate by 7%, all of those together are going to net out to an amount of revenue that you have next year that you didn't have this year, right? That's the financial benefit of that customer engagement. Like, of course, there's a whole bunch of intangible benefits as well. Are you delivering better customer experience because your messaging is more relevant, it's more timely, it's more closely tied to what people's behavior reflects their preferences, or what they've explicitly told you are their preferences for SMS messages versus email messages versus push notifications, right? All those things, but those will be reflected in those revenue metrics, right? So in addition to having some intangibles that you maybe can't measure. So again, let's say it's $500,000 next year that you estimate you'll have that you didn't have this year. You just need to, again, subtract that cost out, divide it by the cost, and there you have your ratio. If it's positive, the more likely you're going to have the benefit. Now you need to do that all again after you finish the project and compare it. This is what I said, how you want to close that gap between what you estimate and what you actually end up with, so that you can fine tune that process going forward. And if you're just as an example, so Tech Target recently in an article, said, average sort of tech maturity type projects and digital transformation related projects have a 6-month project life. Well, if that 6-month project takes 12 months, there's no way your ROI estimate is going to match the actual, right? Your cost basis is going to be much higher than what you originally thought. Or if you realized half the benefit, if you thought you were going to get $500,000 of additional revenue out of it and you only got $250,000, that's going to have a huge impact on how that actual turns out. So you have to do that hard work. Again, estimate conservatively, build risk into the modeling itself, so you have some actual range of expected outputs. There's things you can do to like use Monte Carlo simulations or other tools to actually see the likelihood of a profitable outcome, based on those ranges of inputs that you think are reasonable. And then do the hard work of comparing what actually happened to what you thought was going to happen. It's really important. And an honest assessment is key to that. So the big things, I guess, to sort of kind of take a step back for a minute, I've just been kind of rambling here for a minute. Daoud, questions, and then I can also elaborate on a couple things.
Okay. I'll give you an interesting question. Let's say that I am a marketing executive who is convinced that I need to do digital transformation. So I get a question from my boss, tells me in 1 minute, justify ROI and spending on digital transformation for me.
Yes.
1 minute tops.
Um, 1 minute tops. Okay, start with if you have 1 minute to catch his or her attention, I would start with a business problem or a gap or an opportunity that you know is real, and I would then I would do your 30-second due diligence to say, hey, from where we stand today, if we solve this problem, if we capitalize on this opportunity, we stand to reap a benefit of X, and our initial estimate is that we can do it for a cost of Y, and so I think reasonably, with some risk built in, we could easily, have a 250 to 300% ROI on this investment, right? And then I would say, give me the time I need to, put a formal proposal in front, of you. Yeah.
Okay. So digital transformation is all about, as we said, incremental changes and incremental improvements in business and processes and skills, people, stuff like that. Would you say that, the incremental changes that we do necessarily reflect on the ROI, or could it be an incremental change now that could change ROI in an area in like a time frame that we can reasonably, reasonably point at? Like, let's say we want to implement a change in this process or customer engagement this quarter,
Yeah.
and we definitely expect to, like, we have an estimation of a budget of like $10,000, $100,000, but we expect an
Yeah.
ROI to be positive, because like the ROI will be negative at first, as anything in the world. But we
Yes.
do expect to break even and then have a positive ROI in a specific time frame. Does it reflect, incrementally also, or does it,
Yeah. No, you're bringing up. This is a very important question. It's actually a very complicated question. I appreciate it. It kind of brings me back to some talking points I have here on my note cards, and I appreciate that question a lot. It's some of what you're saying is exactly why the best kind of ROI estimation methods don't just simply do that simple kind of cost benefit analysis, right? They use formulas such as net present value, which takes into account the differential value of money over time, right? The fact that $100 today is not worth the same as $100 5 years from now. It takes into account the fact that the investment today has implications of maybe what else we can invest in right down the line. It has implications on if the benefit of an investment occurs over a sufficiently long period of time, you have to account for that changing value of the money that you're investing, right? So those kinds of formulas are really important in that, and that's why, again, you need to involve your CFO's team and a really good project manager to kind of help, get some of this stuff. Math formulas will do the work for you, but you need to have the appropriate inputs, right? You need to kind of know what the expected rate of return on investments is, the rate of inflation, et cetera, right? You need to kind of have some really good inputs to make these formulas work. But similarly, what else you said is you might be investing something today that has a significant price tag, and it's going to take you some time to recoup those costs, right? So there's also this idea of like a payback period, right, or a break even period on an investment. And I think, you know, especially for projects that improve efficiency or reduce costs, uh, that can be really crucial information, right? Is like, is this going to take us, 6 months to, kind of cross that line of what we've invested, or is it going to take, 5 years, right? And then how long into the future after that payback period do you continue to realize those benefits in perpetuity, or again, is there some limited window of benefit there, right? So that's all really crucial. The other thing is that you mentioned is some of the changes we make are, we're training our teams, we're upskilling, we're changing processes. So this is again why your models need to include things like, okay, if you're training your team or you're buying a new tool, so you need to account for that ramp up period where you're not realizing any benefits you think you're going to get from that tool, right? So it's you're not getting benefits of a highly trained employee on day one when you start highly training them, right? You're gaining that benefit when that training is done and they have more experience, more expertise. Similarly, until that tool is fully ramped up, until that process is fully ramped up, you're not gaining all of the benefit. So you do need to plan for that ramp up period. In many cases, in some cases, maybe the benefit will be almost immediate, but in a lot of cases, you need to plan for that ramp up period, and you need to plan for you know that gap between the one-time costs that are
Yes.
upfront and
Mhm.
the realizing that benefit over time. So the time horizon of your financial benefits is really important to consider in trying to predict the outcome of these projects for sure. Um, and yeah, I think that question encapsulates that really well. And it also reinforces that, needing to understand what area of your business you think is most impacted by a given project, right? That's why it's always so crucial to have projects tied to specific use cases, business problems, opportunities, right? So you can, appropriately say, okay, these are the KPIs we think we're going to influence. This is how much or how little we think they're going to influence them. So this is what we think the impact is going to be. And we are able to measure that. And so therefore we can also see at the end of the day, did we do what we said we were going to do? Did we, lag what we said we were going to do? Did we exceed what we said we were going to do? And why? And those are, the two big things. I know this is sort of obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Right? But you can either, in your estimate, you can either mess up on the cost input side estimates or the benefit outputs side, right? But of course, you can screw up math too. But if you did the math right, the big thing is, did you get those those two key components of the ROI right? Or let's put it this way: did you get them as wrong? Your estimate's going to be wrong. The hope is you get it less wrong by doing a good job. Yeah, and it's always better to be as conservative as possible with building risk into that estimate, so that hopefully there's upside versus downside in terms of the actual ROI.
Speaking of, I want to ask something that, because with any project, with any initiatives that I take as a content creator or anyone in the digital sphere takes, to be honest, we have to have show gains to, validate that whatever we're doing is, going to work, and we need to just put some, back into it,
Hmm.
um, for the longer. So, is there an issue, not an issue, is there a way to differentiate between the short-term successes, but also the long-term, the long-term ROI? So we definitely need to have some shortcut, like short-term successes, but do we take those into consideration where when we are calculating ROI, or
Yeah.
do they belong in two different segments where one thing we have like the short terms and these we have to just back us up and say yes, what we're doing is good and it is working, and we definitely need to have long breath and we need to, you know work long on it to generate sustainable, and I again say sustainable ROI. So can share your thoughts on this part, because I know you have a lot to say.
I think, I mean, um, hopefully, if you create a roadmap for these kinds of initiatives, right? Like I said, there's oftentimes, we're talking about there's going to be multiple projects. It's not going to be just sort of one incremental, change, right? So hopefully your roadmap is prioritized, based on the expected level of impact, the expected level of urgency, and the level of effort, right? So it's prioritized to kind of take care of the high impact, high urgency stuff first, right? And as well as kind of, get any sort of low hanging fruit that's easy to do, low cost, right? So hopefully you're tailoring your roadmap, curating your development cycles, and investments to kind of realize impact as soon as possible, or to mitigate potential risks, right? Because some, as we've talked about in previous episodes, some of digital transformation is mitigating risks and changes in the industry that we may be having to deal with. So really preventing loss versus making gains. But in either case, so I think there's a big piece of prioritization that addresses what you're talking about. But then I guess on the data side, I was just reading an interesting article in the last couple of days about MMM, media mix modeling and marketing mix modeling, and this is an ongoing problem in that world as well, right? Because essentially you have uh, two kind of big components of marketing and advertising, kind of the ongoing sort of building your brand, right? Building awareness. And these things are kind of, long-term trends. You're investing in kind of, market penetration and, mind share and all of these different things, favorability. And you can sort of see, if you look at, long-term trends and long trend lines, that's where you see that growth over time of your sort of, brand equity and market penetration. But if you look at the like weekly sales or daily sales, you're going to have these huge lumpy short-term trends going on, right? And those trends are impacted by each other's activities, right? So you kind of have short-term demand capture marketing activities, and you have longer-term kind of brand building activities. And so the key is to understand both, and to try and disentangle, like to look at the right data in the right time scales, using the right sort of statistical methods and everything, right, to to assess the impact of both, right? Um, so, uh, I guess to answer your question head on, you need to both look at the short term impacts of things and the long term impacts of things, and do your best to not muddy the waters of each of those sets of trends to see the impact of what you're doing, right? So if you looked at, I mean, using like e-commerce brands as an example, if you knew nothing about holiday seasonality, you knew nothing about the sort of Black Friday, Cyber Monday phenomenon, right? And if you looked at, daily sales from, the day after Thanksgiving until the shipping deadline for Christmas in the US, right? And you tried to extrapolate what your paid search budgets should be, or what you think your ongoing organic search volume would be, right? You would lose your job within 2 weeks of the new year, right? So it's really important to understand the time scale and the trend lines of business metrics to assess impact appropriately, right? And which means not only do you need to consult with the CFO when you're doing ROI analysis, you also need to consult with your BI and data science people. If you really want to try and mute out things like seasonal impact, promotional impact, right? If you really want to try and get as clean of an analysis of the impact of the things you're doing, you need to work with smart people with good tools on your teams. Did that answer your question? I hope I did. I think I did.
I mean, you need to stop answering my questions in short form. You go long form. But yes, that answers my question. And it brings up a question, but I don't think we have time for it this episode, which is assessing. And my question will be, what areas of a business does digital transformation impact, and how do you assess the benefits, which directly ties it to ROI and digital transformation. But this will be in the next episode, as we keep our tradition of telling people that the next episode subject will be live. So stay tuned. We're gonna launch. We're gonna talk about this in the next episode, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing that. So bye bye.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Digital Disruption Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of digital transformation and gained valuable insights to help navigate the ever-changing landscape. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us on our website, e-CENS.com, or connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and stay tuned for more exciting discussions on the forefront of digital innovation. Remember, the future is now, and it's time to embrace the power of transformation. Thanks for listening, and until next time.